Welcome to Being in Motherhood. We're your hosts, Kendra Fitzgerald and Nicole Coons, sisters, moms, and the co-founders of Devoted Mamas.
This show is all about you and using your perfectly messy, absurd, and marvelous experiences in motherhood as opportunities to hone your greatest qualities.
Because your family deserves the best of you, not the most of you.
You'll gain the tools to be a bold advocate for yourself in pregnancy, claim your joy in birth, and find wholeness in postpartum.
Being in Motherhood starts right here.
In today's episode, we're back with part 2 of what we wish we knew earlier about motherhood. Today, we're bringing Nicole's 7 things that she wished she knew. And I'm so excited to get into this because, like we said in the other episode, these are things that if we had a younger sister, we would want her to know. So kind of think of like our listeners as our younger sisters. We're sharing all of this with.
Indeed. Yes.
So let's get right to it. What's your number 1?
Yeah. So I'm going to jump right into, I'm going to go first to birth. So something that I wish I had known about birth is that the sensations of birth, like the labor sensations, can be incredibly satisfying and that I didn't need to fear them so much. I literally had a stack of books on my first pregnancy called like how to feel the fear and do it anyway, how to avoid pain in childbirth. Like it was all about the pain and fear for me. And that guided so much of my preparation and how I experienced my birth. The contrary was like, I wish someone had just told me like, there's the possibility that your labor sensations will feel orgasmic, will feel satisfying, will feel incredible. And you're going to really connect with those. It's not that that's the experience for everyone, but just if someone had told me that the sensations had the potential to be very satisfying, I really would have been more open-minded about how cool these labor sensations were. Because really, fear contributes to feeling pain. When we feel fear, we constrict, we resist. And so studies have even shown that feeling fear, having high adrenaline levels, having tension in the body just creates more experience of pain and suffering with your labor contractions. So by flipping this and really appreciating that the sensations of birth and labor could be satisfying, it really would have given me the opportunity to just experience how powerful our bodies are. And then also being able to move your body. Because when you're in fear mode, you don't really move, you kind of freeze, you stay stuck. And in my second one, I did this. I really oriented towards satisfaction and feeling satisfied. And it just put me in a totally different space of being willing and interested and curious about moving my body, using different positions, using my breath, using my gaze, using touch, using my connection with my partner. And all of these things they're like the secret tools that no one really talks about, but they can really keep your labor productive and ultimately satisfying. So that's definitely my first.
Yeah. It's so interesting that the conditioning that we all have about birth is around fear, that it's something to be feared. It's something that is super painful and is going to be, you watch TV shows and everything, how it's depicted. And it is completely based in like so many mothers that we talk to are like, I'm terrified. I'm so scared. When there is this alternate viewpoint of it being really satisfying. And that seems like completely contrary to so many people. Like, how is that possible that it could be satisfying? Like it's supposed to hurt.
Yeah.
But if you go in, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think it's going to hurt, it's going to hurt. But if you think it can be satisfying, it could be satisfying.
Then you start asking like, well, how can that be? And you start exploring like, how can I make it satisfying? Like, what do I need to be satisfied in this very primal event?
And that can be the difference between having a satisfying birth, having a birth that you remember fondly versus a birth that you have a traumatic experience with too, which we had a whole podcast episode about that as well. But I love that you brought that up.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's definitely my first thing I wish I had known sooner. The second thing I wish I had known sooner is around breastfeeding and what I wish I had known, because I really was so determined to breastfeed my first, or both of them, but really my first especially. And I only had one breast that was productive. The other one did nothing. So I felt already a disadvantage. What I wish I had known just sooner, and someone really took me aside and really counseled me, is that it is okay if breastfeeding doesn't work out. For me, what worked was a hybrid breastfeeding and bottle feeding with my second. And when I reflect back on the amount of stress and lost sleep and indigestion and just overall feelings of feeling not good enough, not feeling adequate, not feeling smart enough, like what was, just really tormenting myself over my challenges with breastfeeding with my first, and being so determined that the only thing that was going to help her was my own breast milk. Come to find out, she had a milk protein allergy and I needed to change my diet significantly, which I did overnight. I completely overhauled my diet. I did everything I possibly could, but the amount of stress that put on my body and my system and everything was just overwhelming. And I sent myself into, I'm sure, many levels of anxiety and eventually depression that I feel like I could have avoided really if I had just been given more permission or more reminders that, like, hey, it is okay if your breastfeeding plans go differently, whatever you have in
Yeah,
mind for your breastfeeding journey, it's okay. Like, there is no one right way. And with my
absolutely.
second, from the beginning, I was like, I'm going to breastfeed, but feel free to introduce the bottle at the hospital, just so we've got that little imprint of like, oh, the bottle is just as good as the breast. And I really left all options on the table from the very beginning. And I can't even begin to tell you, I can almost feel it right now, like the peace in my body, the grounding, like the let go in my body that I felt and that I continue to feel to this day, because I made that decision to like be okay with whatever amount of breastfeeding I was able to do and be grateful and love that. And to also be grateful for the formula that was going to also keep him fed and nourished. So
Yeah.
I just wish I had known that sooner. And I took that advice with my second, and it was night and day different. And I'm just so thankful for that. So I definitely want to pass that one on.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So the third thing I wish I had known sooner was in regards to postpartum care, postpartum recovery. What I wish I had known is how actually straightforward and complete it can be within that 6 to 8 time frame if we really prioritize the right foods for healing and the right amount and kind of daily physical body care. I think that we just are not given a manual of any kind for our own self-care. We don't get the doctor's visits that we had in pregnancy and postpartum. And so much focus is on the baby because they're demanding and they need to eat a lot and sleep a lot and poop a lot. But,
Yeah.
I think if I had known sooner how important it is to pay attention to the actual foods I was eating, like which foods and how often and how much and so forth. And also the physical body care. I used a lot of practices from the Ayurvedic system of well-being. And the way I felt after my second was significantly better because I had good information, good practices in place in order to truly take care of myself. And it really was like straightforward. It was simple. It was not complicated. It wasn't hard. It was simply just knowing that it mattered and making better choices to have those things as part of my family life. It wasn't
Yeah.
just like all about the baby. It was like, okay, baby needs this and I, mother, need this. So it really was putting me more on like the balance scale with my baby in those first 6 to 8 weeks. And it made all the difference.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. It's so interesting how much looking at our own nourishment really accounts for our own recovery as well. And it goes back to, making sure that we're looking after ourselves as much as we're looking after our own babies too.
I mean, the foods in general, like for me, I just sort of dismissed a lot of advice that was out there. I was like, oh, I don't really need that. Oh, that sounds nice, but I don't need that. And I just ignored a lot of advice. I was like, I'll just wait and see. And that wait and see posture just did not actually work out. So really just understanding how important it is. And to your point in the last episode where you talked about, building your safety net ahead of time, this is kind of along the same lines. And for me specifically, the safety net was around like really being organized and plan ahead of the kinds of foods that I knew were going to help me heal and the physical body care that I needed to keep my healing going without any setbacks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my next one, my number 4 thing I wish I had known, kind of relates to the postpartum care and setting myself up, but it was specifically about how much having a third person, a helper. So I say third person because it was me and my husband, and for our second child, our son, our mom was there, but she was there like her job was to completely be caretaker. That was her agree. She was like, I'm coming to be the caretaker of both baby and me. And if she hadn't been up to that challenge, like she just really wanted to come visit the baby, then I would have set up actually another person, an actual helper person after the baby is born who can help. And the reason I wish I had known this sooner is that the first time I didn't have that. It was just my husband and me there with the baby for a few weeks before mom came. And that time was really overwhelming. Like very quickly, I got overwhelmed. I felt the dysregulation rise and I just felt completely ill-equipped. And by contrast, having that help with baby number 2, I was able to stay focused, to stay calm, to stay regulated, and just basically feel more equipped because I wasn't trying to do everything myself. And just like the other aspects of food and self-care, I know deep down that this was a big part of my attempts to ward off postpartum depression.
Yeah.
Because I did have it with my first. And I just really feel that everyone should start thinking about sooner, what is the help that they have? What is the support team that they have in the home for actually making sure that they're getting breaks and that they're able to either prepare food or have food prepared for them. But getting help with my baby, especially the first time, really, I feel like it really could have lessened my intensity of anxiety and depression and the postpartum depression that I experienced.
Yeah, that is so huge. And we both brought that up in both of our lists, which is getting that support soon after the baby is born, getting that help. What that looks like is this is where baby nurses and postpartum doulas can really be helpful because they're there to fully look after the baby. Baby nurse more for just the baby, but postpartum doula is really there to look after the mom too. I understand there's also, a little economic aspect that goes along with that. Not everyone can afford a baby nurse. Not everyone can afford a postpartum doula. But oftentimes there are people in our lives who can fill that role. And we have to ask and know what we're asking for.
Yeah.
When we had our babies, I had the same experience too, that, our mom came and stayed with me and helped me take care of the baby. And like she filled that role of postpartum doula. She was our postpartum doula.
That's right.
And, I also know that this is also becoming more understood that mothers need more help in those early stages. And I know there are a lot of organizations that are working to get this help into places where it's needed, which is every household.
Absolutely.
I can think of one off the top of my head, which is the Hello 7 Foundation. And they are working to make sure that mothers have the appropriate help that they need to really survive that first year. So it's a good resource to look up.
Amazing. Too many moms spend years feeling frustrated about the speed of their postpartum recovery. Their back and hip pain is getting worse. They don't know what kind of exercise is safe. They miss fitting into their pre-pregnancy clothes and feel deflated not being able to run after their kids at the park because of pain, leaking, or overall squishiness. Can you relate?
The real problem is that these moms haven't figured out which phase of postpartum recovery they're in. There are actually 4 phases a mother goes through to being fully recovered physically. Would you like to know where you are on your path to full recovery? Take our postpartum pelvic floor and core strength quiz to find out.
Visit devotedmamas.com/quiz. When you do, you'll learn exactly which exercises will move the needle forward on your fitness so you can stop feeling discouraged and start feeling like yourself again.
Get your score and exercise plan today at devotedmamas.com/quiz.
The next one really takes this topic one step further. This topic of getting, having a safety net, having the right support around you. Something I wish I had known sooner is the value of removing myself from the house.
Ooh, that's such a
So
good
with
one.
my first,
Such a good one.
I was always around. I was always there. I was always like, even when somebody was like, quote, hanging out with the baby, I was just there. I wouldn't leave. And this really came back to bite me later because I developed this belief in my own head that I couldn't be gone, that I was
Yeah.
needed all the time, everywhere. And then it really just set up a pattern of dependency that was just not necessary. And as soon as I really it dawned on me like, oh, actually, when I leave and I'm not here, number one, I get a complete reset. I get to like see different things, think different things, feel different things.
Yes.
And my kids and whoever is hanging out with them, whether it's a babysitter or a family member or my husband, their dad, like they get to do things that they can't do or they wouldn't do in the same way if I were here. So win, all around. The value of removing myself from the house or wherever, my responsibilities lie for a little bit has so much value. And I see it and I feel it. And that is something I just wish I had known sooner so that I would be more enthusiastic about like, hey, I'm going to go out and it's going to be awesome. And you get to just like figure some stuff out too. And I can remember even stepping out and then getting the phone calls. I'm like, oh, this is happening. What do I do? Like, I don't know what I would do. So just do something and then let me know what worked for you.
Yeah.
So like truly removing yourself, like not even like driving from the back seat or driving from, distance, but like truly removing yourself for a little bit consistently.
Yeah. This is also so valuable. And I wish it were one of mine that I had chosen because I agree with you that, there is so much value in this because not only are you refueling yourself, but it's also your partner is also getting the chance to figure stuff out on their own. And I think that's an important thing that you mentioned is like, give them the chance to figure it out. You don't have to have all the answers. And maybe they do things differently than you do. And that's okay. They figure it out.
Sometimes they do it better.
Yeah. And they might find a better way to do things. You're like, never thought about that. But they wouldn't have had the chance to do it if you were there, like, in the back seat being like, no, this is the way you do it. It just creates a better dynamic too, because then they feel like they have control over something and it's not like over controlling everything. I also have a story about this that I'll share quickly. When my oldest son was about 2.5, I went away on a trip very far away. I went to India with a girlfriend of mine for a week. And I had so many thoughts running through my head, like, I shouldn't be doing this. Like, he's too little. He's going to miss me. And then we're in India and we met up with these people that we did not realize were also from New York. We ran into them and we ended up having drinks with them. And it was a woman and her daughter who was in her 20s, and the woman was probably in her like late 50s. We started talking and we got to talking about like, our families and everything. And I said, yeah, I left my 2.5-year-old son at home with my husband. And she looked at me straight in the eyes and she was like, this is the best decision you could have ever made. Take it because this is so important. Continue to do this because you are growing as yourself. You're giving your child and your partner a chance to bond in a really deep way. And you're also setting the stage so that you are your own person, that you have space. You can, do the things that you need to do and still be a mother. And that to me was just like having this older woman with a woman who is in her 20s who's traveling now with her child say this to me. It was something that she said she wished she knew earlier. And it still gives me chills to this day.
I love that.
Take the time. You don't have to go to India. You don't have to go on a trip, but take the day. Like, take the day and go do something for yourself and don't feel guilty about it. Go stay in a hotel for a night. Don't feel guilty about it because it's benefiting you and it's benefiting your child and your partner.
Yes.
I love that.
Okay, so the next one, changing gears a little bit, but kind of in a similar vein. I wish I had known the extent to which my core and pelvic floor strength would be connected to my empowerment as a woman. That sounds like a platitude, maybe. But really what I mean by this is that, and it was not until my second that I realized this, that prioritizing my core and pelvic floor strength, restoration, really getting that strength back and feeling that strength inside, it really just restored that like, this is not the way our ancestors defined motherhood. That wasn't part of their experience. Like this is a relatively new level of science and fitness science and understanding that we now have in women's health that didn't exist so boldly and so prolifically. And it's still not as prolific as we want it to be, which is why we do what we do. But when I focus on my core and pelvic floor restoration and my strength at that level, I'm doing things that are meaningful to me because I see how they make me feel. And this is the kind of motherhood I want to craft. And what I love about this is, I wish I had known sooner how much it would play a role in my feeling like the woman and the mother and the person that I want to be, and less of like me defining motherhood by other people's or the old stories that we tell. Like, well, maybe it changes your body, but not the way I think it changes your body. The way I think it changes your body is really cool. You gain new strength, you gain new power, you gain deeper connection. I have connection now to places within my core and pelvic floor that I did not even really know existed.
Yes.
And how cool is that? Like I
So
feel
cool.
so much more connected to me and who I am. And it's because of the focus that I put on my core and pelvic floor and learning about it and investing time and feeling and sensing and just doing the work. I think if I had known sooner, I simply would have just done it with more enthusiasm from the beginning. I didn't even know about it with my first. It wasn't around my radar. So I'm really thankful that it came onto my radar, thanks to you, sis. And it became my work, really.
And this is not an anomaly. We hear this all the time from moms who are older to moms that are younger. It's like postpartum is the great equalizer. Everybody starts back at zero, which can feel scary, but it's actually kind of awesome because you get to reset. And we hear so many times when we're talking about core and pelvic floor strength and all this knowledge that we now have, so many moms chime in who have 15, 16, 17-year-olds. I wish I knew that when my kids were younger, which it still applies. And that's the response that we have is like, you can still do it too.
Well, yeah, that's the cool thing. So I wish I had known sooner, but I'm also really grateful that I learned when I did. And even if you are a mom with a 14-year-old like me, and you're just now starting the work, that's great.
Yeah.
Recognize that it has the potential to connect you to your empowerment as a woman. It takes you to that deeper place that's a far richer world than just caring about how cinched in your waist is, because that's not what it's all about. It's really about that really deep, energetic, and physical strength that we possess. And it's just waking that up. And when you do, you feel like nothing is off limits.
Yeah, 100%.
So the last thing that I wish I had known a little earlier about motherhood, I think I would like to know this. Maybe I wouldn't. Maybe if I had known this ahead of time, I would not have embarked on this journey, but no, that's not true. But really, this one is something that I really appreciate about becoming a mother, is that parenthood is the greatest personal development journey of all.
Oh my gosh.
It's kind of like the hero's journey.
It is. Totally.
Yeah. Like knowing how much parenthood would change me as a person at my core. And it really was a personal development journey. I think if I had really known this ahead of time, I would have had an even longer view, as a much longer horizon than maybe what I felt in the begining. I think when we're holding our newborns and we've got those first few years and it's very intense, there's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of fatigue, a lot of, a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it can be hard to really see the bigger picture. But I think if I had known or really had the perspective a little sooner of I just have to kind of be in the soup right now, but I know that this is helping me in ways that I can't see yet. And just learning how to think in that way in and of itself is a gift, because you learn how to handle the ups and downs. And I think, you definitely talked about this in your episode about just the emotions and being regulated and being able to kind of handle the ups and downs and twists and turns. And I think for me, the way that I express that is just really embracing it as almost like the hero's journey. I don't know if you know, like, or if people know the hero's journey. I know we've talked about the hero's journey before in other contexts, but the hero's journey is really starts with like that call to adventure. And then it moves into the refusal of the call. So that we kind of have like, yes, I'm going to be a parent. This is amazing. I'm going to be a mom. And then the baby arrives. You're like, wait a minute. Is this what I wanted? Like the refusal of the call is part of the hero's journey. And then recognizing like, oh, I don't think I want to be on this journey. I don't want to be on this quest. I must have gotten off the wrong station or something. Like this is not what I had in mind. But this is part of the hero's journey. And then we go along the way in the hero's journey, you meet the mentor. So we meet other mothers, we meet people, we meet teachers, we meet mentors, we meet people on our path who show us like, actually, this is your journey and this is your quest and there is a way through. And then in the hero's journey, the next thing is the crossing of the threshold, which is really like the point of no return. It's like, okay, I accept the fact that I'm here and I'm on this journey and I am moving forward, which sends us down next in the hero's journey into a whole quest of trials, tribulations, ordeals into the dark forest. And eventually we come to the place where we have to choose our path. If you're following a path that someone else put before you, it's not your path. And so we actually have to go into that dark forest and make our own path. Once we overcome and we find our way on our path, which takes some time, but we do find it. We recognize that the journey we're on is ours and we begin to take it as our own. Then we start to see the road back. And so we start to pave our way back from that place. Everything that we've learned, all the trials, tribulations, ordeals, the passage we made through the dark forest, we gathered knowledge, understanding, discovery of our own self, our own resources, our own abilities. We are all our own hero in our own journey. And so we return back to the homeland and we tell what we learned and we share. And this is what the community of motherhood is about. It really is being in community with other mothers who are on their own hero's journey and being vocal about your experience, being vocal and witnessing other people's dark forests and trials and ordeals,
Yes.
giving them the stories and the support that they need, that they can benefit from to stay on their path, on their own journey.
Amazing. I love that you shared that story. It really is a hero's journey, but if we can see the bigger picture, it really helps just bring things more into perspective. I just love all of these things that you wish you knew earlier. It's so helpful. And being your little sister, I got the benefit of having some of those experiences of you sharing the things that you wish you had known. And it just brings me so much joy to be able to share this with other mothers too. So thank you for sharing.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the Being in Motherhood podcast by Devoted Mamas, please share it with other mothers and leave a review.
As always, you can find us on Instagram at Devoted Mamas and check out all links and resources in the show notes. Be courageous and stay devoted to growing into your best self as a mom.